I thought it would be an effective strategy for Donald Trump in the upcoming presidential debate for him to mention specific cases involving people murdered by illegal aliens as the best way to demonstrate Joe Biden's ineffectiveness on the border and the peril in which he is placing American citizens. But I don't think anybody can be expected to remember as many names as Donald Trump would have to remember if he were going to do what I suggest, because I'm looking at a tweet right now, which is a collection of photos of people who were murdered by illegal aliens, police officers, truck drivers, teenagers, moms, grandmoms, kids, black inner city youth. And I count 75 people. Now, Trump is sharp, but I couldn't remember the names of 75 people. The latest name is 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungare. She is yet another person who would be alive if Joe Biden did what he claims to, I guess, now be doing, which is securing the southern border, although he's maintained throughout his presidency that the border is secure. Jocelyn Nungare was raped and strangled and dumped in a creek in Houston, Texas by 26-year-old Franklin Jose Peña Ramos and 21-year-old Johan Jose Rangel Martinez. Fantastic. Both of them entered the country illegally. Both of them, maybe Biden's right, were detained when they tried to enter, and they were released. This is not an uncommon story. The illegal alien who murdered Rachel Morin, the mother of 5 in Maryland, 37 years old, we now know tried to enter the country on January the 19th in New Mexico. But they caught him and they expelled him because he was dangerous, because he was wanted for a murder in Ecuador. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not Ecuador. I have the guy who murdered Rachel Morin, I have confused with the machete-wielding guy in New York who raped I'm losing track, 13-year-old girl. That's right. I apologize to the murderer of Rachel Morin because I wouldn't want to get your country of origin wrong, because, of course, that would be something on my part. My Christian nationalism would be coming out, I guess. So the same guy then entered the country on January the 31st. Notice a pattern? Less than 2 weeks later. I'll try again. They're not going to get me this time. Oh, wait, they did get you. Maybe they're really good. He tried in El Paso the second time. They caught him. He was expelled. A week later, he tried in New Mexico again. You'd think he'd learned his lesson, right? No. He was caught and expelled. A week later, he tried in El Paso again. He's a persistent little monster. And he was able to elude Border Patrol. He's one of the gotaways. One of the gotaways. Would you like to know the numbers on the non-detained illegal migrants during Joe Biden's 4-year run of terror in the White House? In 2021, 3.7 million people crossed the border under Joe Biden and were not detained. Hey, let's call back home and tell people, borders open. Biden wasn't kidding when he said in the debates, surge to the border. So in 2022, we went up from 3.7 million to 4.8 million. And that gives us what? 1.1 more people, 1.1 million more people to call back home and say, come on in. And they did. 6.2 million in 2023, an increase of 1.4 million over the previous year, an increase of 2.5 million over the first year Biden's in office. And we're not done with fiscal year 2024 yet. And we've already had more illegal migrants come across the border in 2024, 7.4 million this fiscal year. And we got the horror stories to tell about it, including Jocelyn Nungery in Houston, Texas. Here's Mike Tobin of Fox telling us about how Jocelyn Nungery was murdered.
The last time Jocelyn Nungery's mom saw her, she was going to bed last Sunday night, but Jocelyn snuck out of the room. It's not clear how she made contact with the suspects, but they were captured by surveillance cameras right up to the last moments of Jocelyn's life. They walked to a bridge where police say the 12-year-old was murdered, jumped in a bayou. Her body later found in a creek. The medical examiner says the cause of death was strangulation, and the suspects were picked up by police early Thursday. DHS sources tell Fox News 26-year-old Jose Pena Ramos crossed into El Paso last May. He was caught by Border Patrol and released with a notice to appear at a later date. 21-year-old Johan Jose Rangel Martinez crossed into El Paso in March. He was also picked up by Border Patrol. The status of his release into the U.S. is not clear. Because of Jocelyn's young age, Houston authorities say the capital murder charge applies, and that makes the death penalty possible.
Well, goody good. We get to keep them on death row for 20 years and feed them and house them and clothe them because, I mean, to put them to death for what they did to a 12-year-old girl in Houston, Texas, that would be discriminatory toward migrants. Not caring, not feeling, not compassionate enough. I am quite sure. Because you see this on display all the time, right? Poor Ramos and poor Martinez. They have the mayor of Houston taking note of their case, and it does not appear that the mayor of Houston went to the Franklin County Common Pleas Court Judge Michael Holbrook School of Compassion for Criminals. Well, I don't know about that, Mayor. Maybe in Texas. But here in Ohio, we turn criminals loose all the time because, I mean, if we put them in jail, they might learn how to beat criminals, right? Is that the logic, right? That's the logic of the Franklin County Juvenile Court judges. It's the logic, I guess, of Michael Holbrook, the Franklin County Common Pleas Court judge who turned Devon Blair, 23 years old, loose on the streets of Columbus in mid-May after he had held a knife to the throat of, dragged by the hair, his now deceased pregnant girlfriend, Brooke DeVinny. And this story, have you noticed? This is one of those heinous stories that would claim national headlines. You'd think among domestic violence counseling centers and the like. Here's Exhibit A of what can happen if we don't give stiff penalties to domestic abusers. I've been watching the news coverage locally, and boy, it's awfully quiet. I can't even get a domestic abuse person who works at a shelter to come on the air and talk about this kind of stuff. There was one victim of domestic abuse here in Columbus who spoke to WSYX6, and kudos to Channel 6 on this. They were the only ones who covered the vigil for Brooke DeVinny the other day. They're the only ones continuing to write about this situation. And if you say, well, I mean, this is an outlier, Bruce, how often does this happen? Well, according to WSYX6, we've had 50 murders in Columbus this year. 6 of them are domestic violence related. 6 of them, 6 of the 50. I think that's a pretty high number. I have never forgotten and never will forget because it was senseless and preventable for many, many, many reasons. That horrific summer day a few years back when Westerville police officers Anthony Morelli and Eric Juring lost their lives. Were they domestic abusers? No, the guy who was waiting on the other side of the door that they knocked on a Saturday morning was. And he was out even though he had committed a long list of criminal acts that should have had him behind bars. But Officer Juring and Morelli were unfortunately the victims of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And as soon as they opened the door, the domestic abuser ran to the couch to retrieve a gun from under a cushion. And this tells you about the mindset of police officers in Central Ohio and elsewhere, is that they didn't fire at him. They had to wait because they knew they'd be called on the carpet for the wrong motivation for discharging their weapon. They had to wait until he shot Joring in the head, and then Morelli wrestled him to the ground, and this guy shot Morelli in an area where his body was not covered by a vest. That's a domestic